always a pleasure to see the innovation we have in our continent. And fintech, as I said in my introduction, is one of the ingredient we need for our recipe to develop our continent. So the sauce is getting better. So thank you for all these fintech startups. We are now going to move to our mobility panel, Building Bridge for Investment. So Afi, you are staying with me. Hein? Tu bavardes ou tu débriefes? Tu débriefes. Donc, so Afi is going to moderate the coming panel. But before I welcome our speakers, I just wanted also to share something about how we are experiencing also mobility in Africa and how it is affecting also our day-to-day life. Personally, I step out from Dakar and go to live, at Ngaparou, a small area around Sali. And and this decision was made. I took that decision because I was just trying to save my mental health because of Dakar traffic. So, and this is one thing. The second thing is that every time I think that many of you had to travel through the continent to come in Dakar. And when it's come to also to travel in our continent, you just say, okay, let me take a big breath and and just cross finger that everything is going to be okay, because this is definitely a struggle to move in our continent, to move in our cities, and that is why also, and we need this creativity or also this innovation to bring some solution for that, and just announce also our day-to-day life and also announce our African development. So for this panel talking about building bridge for investment, please welcome our speaker, Pape Kane, CEO and founder of Kanimo. Thank you. Simon G. Duchalet, investor Risk Capital at Global Innovation Fund. Maria Gabriela Marin, co-founder and CEO of ParkSmart. You have some fans. We call her Gabby. Velani Mbongweni. Is that correct? Thank you. CEO and founder of Lula. And our moderator, Mr. Happy Barry, who is going to guide our speaker through this talk about mobility.
Thank you so much. Hello? All right, we're good. Hi, everybody. The topic today is going to be mobility. Most of us live in African cities, and we can see how fast those cities are growing and how cumbersome it has become to move around, move products, and just basically deal with the pollution that is embedded in all the transportations that we see. For instance, we're all in Dakar, and at the moment, funny enough, so one of the members of our panel on mobility was stuck in traffic. Right? Dakar is not such a big city. It's actually tiny, and we should be able to move around quite easily. 52% of the cars in Senegal are 4x4, creating a lot of pollution. People here have health issues. And today we have great startups that are addressing the problem of mobility in Africa. And we have people that finance those solutions. So on the topic of bridging the investment gap for mobility, I would like for every single panelist to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit how they tackle the problem of mobility. So we're going to start with Velani.
Okay, thank you so much, Hafi. Pleasure to meet you finally. I'm Velani, co-founder and CEO at Lula. in South Africa. We're a platform or marketplace that's connecting businesses and their people to a network of shuttles to move them from home to work and beyond on a daily basis. So we have just under 1,000 drivers on the platform. We've served over 250 businesses, reduced over 900 tons of CO2 from the environment, and done well over 400,000 rides. Really just focusing primarily on B2B as our business model, and our supply really is anything with 6 seats up to 22 seats, as well as a combination of luxury vehicles, really built on the premise that without access to transportation, you cannot access economic opportunities. And without those opportunities, you cannot solve for poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And this is a challenge that is facing all of us across Africa, and in fact, generally across emerging cities that need a better way to move. That's the challenge that Lula is tackling. And we really have 3 core services. One, as I mentioned, is our commuter service that operates 24/7 for businesses across South Africa. The second is our charter service, and that's really for picking you up, taking you home, taking you to a meeting, taking you to an airport, really as and when you need that. And ultimately, our final service is what we call our full day and half day hires. And it's like events like these where businesses can procure the services of our vans to be with them across multiple sites at any given point in time. So that's really what we're about, and yeah, really big on catapulting Africa to the developing future of zero carbon future and economic prosperity through transportation.
Thank you so much, Velani. So our next panelist, Gabi, please.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Gabriela Marin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ParkSmart. Our goal is to digitize parking in emerging cities. We started in Dakar. What we do is we combine 3 different aspects into our network. We work with parking operators, parking our own personal parking assets, and we also involve the informal sector. So this is what we call them, the human IoTs, the street parkers. We've noticed that when we first started our company, our goal was to digitize different parking operators, but we knew that we couldn't create a holistic approach without the street parkers. And we noticed that there's street parkers everywhere, not only just in Dakar, they're in Lagos, they're in La Paz, they're all over the world. So with our solution, what we want to do is be able to, our ultimate goal is to provide a one-click solution, parking solution, especially for emerging cities.
Thank you, Gabi. And next panelist, Simon.
Hey, can you hear me? Yeah. Happy to be here. I'm Simon, working for the Global Innovation Fund, which is an impact-focused venture capital fund based in London. So far, we've made about 25 investments, several of them in the mobility sector. So one of the companies, for example, we financed in the mobility sector is Where Is My Transport? In South Africa, working on mapping the informal routes. I guess in Senegal, you would call the informal transport system the car rapide. Is that right? Yeah. So basically, these informal transport networks are usually, as their name implies, very informal. So users, authorities in the government, companies have very little visibility over what's happening in these networks, what are the routes that are followed. They basically lack any data, and the company is filling that gap with an open data platform that they monetize by selling the data to government authorities to make better transport regulations. They sell it to corporate partners such as transportation companies. And now they have launched a consumer-facing app, a bit similar to what Google Maps has been trying to do globally, enabling consumers to have more visibility over the transport, and especially to find backup options when the informal transport system is not really serving them. Another investment we made in the mobility sector is SafeBoda. This dates back to 2016, so at an early stage. SafeBoda is a ride-hailing platform, similar to Uber, but really serving motor taxi. So Boda drivers in East Africa, and now they've expanded to Nigeria as well. And they've been trying to launch into a super app model where they also do e-commerce, deliveries, and those are also working with car taxi drivers. So yeah, a couple of investments and always eager to do more.
More than a couple, from what I heard. At least 5 or 6. I said more than a couple, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've made a lot of investment. Thank you for that. So our next panelist is Papakan from Sense Startup.
Hi everyone, my name is Papakan, CEO and founder of Kanimo, but also program manager for Sense Startup, which is an association put together by other entrepreneurs to support local startups and help them grow from a maturity level to the next, and obviously introduce them to other players in the ecosystem as far as investors is concerned, and other types of investors like or incubators. And because we are sector agnostic, we are lucky to have the chance to meet with a lot of different startups in different sectors, including the mobility sector, and we obviously are looking into being up to date with the different trends and seeing what's going on and understand some of the needs, but also the cultural barriers and other type of barriers that they may encounter, which is one of the reasons why we were invited here today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we spoke a little bit about the fast growth of our cities. In the current environment of our continent, how does your company help solve the mobility issues?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I answer your question by actually asking a question first, and generally to the public, I'm curious to know, and if you just close your eyes and think about this and say, you know, how did you get from where you were this morning to this venue? And then secondly is, how did you get from the airport to your hotel? And thirdly, how different was that experience from the country or the city in which you originated from? So if you have that in your mind, you will realize that it's probably not very consistent, probably very disorganized, probably needed a bit more transparency in terms of where your drivers were, how much it costs, and if indeed the person who was supposed to pick you up was really the person who was supposed to do so. Now, in our business case, there's a couple of things that really, help us succeed within the context. And the first is community, right? So, our business thrives on having a community of drivers who are in the forefront of fulfilling our services. But secondly, from our customer perspective, by targeting businesses, schools, nonprofits, and any type of organization, they're built around communities of people gathering. So by having that community of drivers and community of customers, our business is effectively a lot more resilient. The second thing is your network and trust in components. So within the Lula environment, being able to trust and verify drivers is a really critical thing that informal providers as well as regular shuttle companies cannot do quite well. Thirdly, is probably to emphasize that in the grand scheme of things, trust, safety, and convenience will always trump price. So if you had to take a flight from Dakar to Nairobi and you had to be picked up by someone, you are more willing to pay more money if you can trust the provider, you feel safe, and it's a convenient process. And in our business model, those are the key things that really take us to the next thing. And ultimately, I think the tailwinds for us is the fact that, as mentioned earlier, you have this African Continental Free Trade Agreement where the demand to move people across the continent is been at an all-time high and has a policy that is supporting that. So as our business grows, we really want to be in partnership with people around the continent to really move people in a safe and reliable way. So those are some of the key components that really support our business case right now to thrive. Of course, when we talk about challenges, we'll speak about that a little bit later, but again, the big thing there would be time and patience to realize that future.
Thank you. So my next question is to Gabby. While building your mobility startup, what were the challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
Oh my God. As a startup, I mean, you just have so many different challenges. For us, it's just even for basically getting started, breaking ground on our first parking lots. It was just in itself, we thought that, oh, we're going to get this done. You come with a different mentality, you're going to get the project done in X amount of time. Yeah, it takes way longer than that. And within that time, your costs keep going up. So it's just that there's just so many different challenges. But I think as any startup, and kudos to all the startups that are here. It's just like, what do you do to overcome it? Like for us, yeah, we had costs from the beginning, and we were a self-funded startup. So it was very difficult, but we added in another component that at the time we were like, well, let's just do car wash. Let's see, we just start with car washes. Are we gonna get the crowd that we need? Just something so simple, boom, we were half full within like a month. It was really incredible to see those kind of things, and just from building your teams, understanding how to create your team, like what do you actually need. Coming from the US, you have a different mentality of what the team means. But here, I've learned so much, and I really appreciate so much the members of my team. They're not maybe at the same level of maybe education as I came here, but they are so much smarter than me. It's just really incredible because you undermine what they know. But even like, for example, for us working with the street parkers, you really undermine. You just see these guys on the street washing your car. You have no idea the knowledge that these guys have. I mean, they know everything. They know which parking area is parked by who reserved what, who owns this place, should you park here or not. And for everybody, you just see these guys on the street and you just think that they're just hanging around. No, it's extremely organized. These guys really work together. They even have days off that they give each other if somebody's sick, somebody comes to replace, and the replacement is not just some guy from the street, it's somebody that they know. So just understanding those kind of things, it's just, those, for us at the beginning, it was a challenge to kind of understand that because we didn't get that from the beginning. So we're like, oh, street parkers, we're just gonna go, we're gonna talk to them, they're just gonna come right over to us. No, it was extremely, very organized. The way we approached them had to be very, with a lot of tact. At the beginning, we made a lot of mistakes. They say, oh, no, you guys just want, you want money. No. They don't want money, they want respect. And so these kind of things are so important to understand in cities like this. And I'm from Cochabamba, Bolivia. We do the same thing. It's the same, it works the same way. So other challenges is just like, for us, parking is so undermined, nobody thinks about it, but everyone wants the benefit of arriving to a parking lot without having to look around, right? But all the work that goes behind it, it's a lot of effort just to get to that level. Things don't move as fast as you want them to be, and sometimes for a lot of startups, that's so stressful, and you just have to keep going. You gotta keep your eyes on the end game, and just, I don't know, just have fun. There's challenges everywhere, but you just gotta keep going.
Thank you for this answer. I really appreciate it. So tapping the local knowledge and the informal markets to really build something from the ground up. I really like this idea. So next question will go to Simon. So when you're making an investment in a mobility startup, what are you looking for?
Thanks for the question. If we take a step back, given I introduced the two investments we made in the sector, I think as an investor, we try to diversify our investments. So I think we would definitely not do similar investments. So we won't do investments in ride hailing, I think. We won't do anything related to data in informal transport networks. So then we need to ask ourselves, what should we do? And I think one of the exciting areas at the moment in the mobility sector in Africa and in the world at large is electric mobility. So anything that has to do with electric vehicles, I think is really exciting for us from many viewpoints, because we've not done it yet. We see a massive opportunity, including for impact, given, as you said in your introduction, public transportation in Africa is such a massive issue, especially with urbanization rates. And we see electric mobility as a potential solution to some of these problems, including air pollution, of course, given it's fueled by clean energy, but also many other impact potential. And then also, as an impact investor, it's important for us to see where we can add value. And I think, given the electric mobility sector is very nascent in Africa, it's a bit more advanced in East Africa, but not so much. And we see some startups emerging in this sector in West Africa as well. I think it's important to provide these companies with patient capital, and that's where impact investors can add value, basically. Patient capital meaning being there for the long term, of course seeking returns, but not in a short time frame, which is super important because electric mobility startups require a lot of investments, like especially CapEx, so capital expenditures, especially as long as there is no public charging infrastructure, these startups will have to build it, which can be interesting from a business point of view, but that requires capital. So again, this idea of patient capital comes in. On more than patient capital, I think it's important to also adapt to the needs of the startups. So at JF, we're able to provide not only equity, but also debt. And I think it's particularly relevant for these kinds of startups that require a lot of CapEx, basically, to provide debt. So that's where we could play a role. And we are actively, looking for opportunities. So please reach out if you have anything in Senegal or West Africa in that sector.
Thank you, Simon. So same question for you, Papa Khan. I know that you're not as actively investing as the Global Innovation Fund, but when you're looking for companies to incubate with Sense startups, what are you looking for when it comes to mobility?
So I think today the first thing that we have to really think about is that we can see definitely that mobility is currently having a good momentum. I think within the last 2 years and some change, it's been about $120 billion that's been invested into that industry, if not more. So obviously it is doing something. But today when we're talking about Senegal, especially here, and we're talking about mobility, we have to really think about, local realities. Make sure that we are understanding the market. Because today, even though the 4 ACEs, like they're called, are taking are really those that the investors are looking into, we have to really think about what really works for us here. We have to think about buying power. We have to think about mentality. We have to think about all those different things that actually do matter. Just because autonomous driving is working for Tesla does not mean that it's going to be something that's going to be working for Senegal. So we have to make sure that when we're supporting those entrepreneurs, that we're really guiding them and making sure that they do understand the market that they really want to address, and that they're actually trying to, bring a solution for a real problem. A lot of times people, I don't know, you have an itch, you're not going to go to the doctor. It may not be a problem, but if you have if you break your ankle, you might want to have to go to the doctor. And those are some of the things that they have to think about when they're like really thinking about their market and how they want to address them. So to me, I think it's interesting when trying to support a startup that is in mobility. It's interesting to really make sure, for me, to see that they made sure that they really understood, the market that they were trying to address, that they understood all the different aspects of, the one that I mentioned as far as buying power, and mentality and things are concerned. Because for a lot of the mobility within the industry, within the 4 A's, a lot of it for Senegalese people may or may not seem like a luxury, things. And if we want to make sure that, then you'll have people who try and make it less of that and try to work on like ride sharing, things of the sort. But we have to me, and if I can see that this entrepreneur really understand all of these different aspects and is actually working towards a solution that addresses this for the Senegalese people, I think that is great. And I think that is something that's going to be very important to do and to replicate in other countries within Africa, because obviously the realities are not going to be the same. And just like mobile money is going to work perfectly fine here, does not mean that that's something that's going to work specifically or greatly in the US, for example, where the banking rate here is very low, as we know it, so it's easier. So we have to, those are like going to be things that I'm going to be looking for. And it's also obviously going to make it easier for the investors that we're going to have as far as partners is concerned. Because if I'm bringing somebody that is not ready, that does not necessarily know this, and because as an investor, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to have a good return on investment. Right. So, and one of the ways to measure that is going to be traction. So if I'm having a luxury product and I don't have that traction, it's not going to be a thing. So, just to sum it up, right there.
Thank you very much for this answer. So we know that the mobility problem will take time. Thankfully, we have patient capital to solve that. The challengers are local, so we'll have to tap into the local knowledge. But what we need to provide is we need to provide safe and reliable options. Let's project ourselves in the next 10 years or 5 years. How do you see the future of industry and the future of mobility on the continent, and in particular in South Africa, Vellani?
Yeah, so I think for us as a continent and region and cities across Africa, the first thing is obviously just unpacking some of the challenges that exist in general. The first is these solutions do definitely take a lot of time to build and take a lot of time to dominate in a specific market. You also need to understand that your competition is not necessarily yourself, but you're competing against governments, right? So the choice is either government builds what you're doing or private sector organizes it and scales it. And from there, you need the capital markets to have a very deep sense of understanding on your why and how we need to get there. Because, if we talk about transportation on your phone, 99% of the people here think of Uber, right? But that took a lot of time and capital that, to even produce any type of returns, and even their returns aren't coming from the ride-hailing business, it's coming from deliveries. So hopefully in the future, there would be a greater appreciation for the time it takes to grow and scale these businesses. And also secondly, is an appreciation that mobility in Africa is not a nice to have, it's actually a necessity. And on top of that, it's actually an infrastructure play. It's not a type of service or product where you're doing transaction fees for a bank and you're doing saving wallets, with all due respect. It's critical infrastructure that even a pandemic like COVID could not stop the need for transportation across the continent. So an appreciation of the time it takes, understanding that you're building infrastructure and not building nice to haves. And thirdly is being able to have a market that can obviously differentiate itself accordingly to its uniqueness. So when people talk about services and transportation that are available on your phone, we mustn't all be grouped as a type of Uber. The same way that PayPal versus Stripe, Airbnb versus Booking.com, Uber Eats versus Postmates, I think a lot of the businesses in these markets need to really just differentiate themselves by 2 or 3 key qualities, whether it be your segment, whether it be your business model, or be your uniqueness of supply. So those 3 or 4 critical elements would be critical for the future. And then if we nail that, you'll have a generally prosperous mobility ecosystem with patient capital, infrastructure, time, and convenience where all of us benefit. At the end of the day, like they say, a rising tide raises all ships. And ultimately, it's about not just not being first to market, but being the one who does the service right. And that's ultimately what needs to happen across Africa.
Thank you for your answer. And I like this idea about specialization. And so let me segue and go to Gabby. So how do you see the future of parking? Because you're in a very particular segment. What is the future of parking like?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more general, my answer, because I think AI is going to change many things for all of us, including the mobility sector. I mean, for us, we're just in the parking industry, but we're gathering data just now. There's so much information out there that would allow you to make very smarter decisions. For us, I see that in the future there will be a one-click parking solution, either through telematics in your vehicle or directly through your app. All the complexity will be in the background via AI. So I do feel like there's going to change very fast, and maybe the next startups or whoever that's looking at this, there's so much data out there, and you can do so much with it. So I think that AI is going to really revolutionize everything, including mobility.
Awesome. Great answer. And thanks for bringing up AI. I think you nailed it. It's part of the solution. So Simon, what do you see the future of the mobility industry being as an investor?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I would say, yeah, completely agree with you on the AI, importance of AI. I think it's important to bring AI to the mass market. So again, coming back to our investment in Where is My Transport, it's a solution that is definitely building on AI, but serving the mass market, which I find very interesting to make sure that this amazing new technology is benefiting, most people, including in emerging markets. And to come back to your question, I would definitely see electric mobility, as I said, as a trend. And it's going to take a long time to really, take the biggest market share. So it's going to be a long ride in a way. There are a couple of challenges that startups can definitely help solve. One of them is the infrastructure challenge, as I said. And ideally, you would have several startups addressing these challenges at different layers. So one startup could focus on the charging aspect of the electric mobility sector. One of the startups could focus on the sales and distribution. Another startup could focus on the maintenance of these new vehicles. Another one could focus on manufacturing or importing these vehicles. So ideally, there would be an ecosystem around this new electric mobility sector where roles would be split. And what we are seeing in the market at the moment is because the ecosystem doesn't exist, many startups are trying to do too much, which is a bit concerning. But I think it's a matter of time. Again, I said, given you gave us a 10-year time frame, I think it's a matter of time for startups to segment the market. On AJF, what we would be particularly interested in seeing in startups is startups that can innovate on the business model front, so making it accessible for the mass market to buy these electric vehicles, particularly on the B2B front. So think of the taxi drivers, think of the van drivers. Again, coming back to Car Rapide in Senegal, how do you address the demand from these drivers that I'm sure would be eager to get the electric vehicles, but as we all know, an electric van costs much more at an upfront cost than a diesel-fueled van. So we are really interested in finding innovations that can solve that issue of the upfront cost, because when you look at it, again, to come back to your 10-year time frame, the total cost of ownership over 10 years of an electric vehicle makes a lot of sense. This is much cheaper than a diesel-fueled vehicle. So it's only a matter of finding the right financing mechanism and business model innovation to solve for that upfront cost issue. So yeah, if anyone in the room has such an innovation, we'd be very keen on looking at it.
Thank you so much. So before I open the floor for questions, maybe Papa Khan can tell us what he thinks about the future of the industry, really quickly.
Well, I'll go very briefly. As far as the future of mobility globally, I see a lot of flying cars, a lot of AI, and I think that we're actually already starting to see some flying cars and things of the sort recently, and I think that it's going to keep bringing new things. As far as locally, I think that it is just going to take some time for the market to really adopt it all, and pretty much probably the help of the government when in terms of infrastructure and things of the sort, because we're looking at the BRT, and I'm assuming that when it's going to be done, if it does everything that it's supposed to do, a lot of things are going to be fixed, less traffic, less et cetera, and I think that mobility will have a better positioning at that time. So that's it.
Thank you for this. So I'm opening the floor to questions, if you guys have any questions. So we're going to take only 2 questions.
We're going to take, just 2 questions. Is there any question in the audience? Questions? So maybe...
Oh, there's one there.
I have one here.
Thanks very much. Simon, a question for you. What stage do you start investing at? And how do companies get to that point where they can raise from you?
Historically we've invested in anything from the seed stage to Series B. So we are quite open. And I think we would look at the maturity of the sector. If it's a mature sector, then we would rather invest in a Series A or Series B. But when it comes to mobility, as I said, given the electric mobility sector is so nascent, we are open to looking at seed stage companies because that's what the market provides, right? So yeah, we are quite open. On any way, we like to start conversations early. So even though the startup is not ready for investment, it's always great to have a chat and see the startup evolve. That's the best situation for us.
Thank you so much. One more question. So maybe if you can conclude.
Sure. Let me wrap up. So this big issue that we'll be talking about, we've seen today what types of solutions company like yours can provide to help us really alleviate issues of pollution, difficulty in getting around in traffic, moving goods and people. I think that there's a great future in mobility. There's so many interesting things that we've talked about. We've talked about AI, patient capital, electric vehicle. We haven't seen it happen yet, but I'm very excited to hear about more about how electric vehicles can be more readily available in Africa. And I would like to thank our guests and really encourage them to keep on going, because I think this is what's going to make our cities livable in the end. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.